The space station floated alone in the darkness between the stars. It was called Frontier Station Zeta 7, and it sat at the very edge of human territory. The station was small, with only 12 people living inside. Their job was simple. They watched the empty space around them and looked for anything coming toward the human colonies. Lieutenant Jake Morrison sat at his control panel staring at the screens. He had been stationed here for 18 months. Every day was the same. He watched the sensors, drank coffee, and counted the hours until his shift ended. Nothing ever happened out here. That was the whole point of the station. It sat 3 light years away from the nearest human colony, right on a path that enemy ships might use if they ever came. Corporal Amy Lewis worked at the communications station nearby. She was young, only 23 years old. When she first came to Zeta 7, she thought it would be exciting. Now she knew the truth. Space duty was boring. Day after day of the same routine, the same faces, the same empty sensor readings. The other crew members went about their daily work. Dr. Lisa Grant studied samples in the small science lab. Engineer Ben Parker checked the station's power systems. Commander Greg Hayes, the officer in charge of the station, was sleeping in his room after working 2 shifts in a row. Nobody expected what happened next. The warning alarms went off at 3:47 in the morning, station time. Jake dropped his coffee cup and jumped toward his controls. His heart pounded in his chest as numbers filled his screen. "I have contacts," Jake called out. His voice shook a little. "Multiple ships. I count 15. No, wait, 23 vessels. Unknown type. They just appeared at the edge of our sensor range." Amy ran to her station and started pressing buttons. "Trying to contact them. No response on any channel." Within 3 minutes, every person on the station rushed into the command center. Commander Hayes pulled his jacket on as he ran. He looked at the main display screen and saw the unknown ships moving toward them in a clear military pattern. "Are they answering our signals?" Hayes asked. Amy shook her head. "Nothing, sir. I tried all the standard frequencies, even the peace signals. They are not responding." Dr. Grant looked worried. "Maybe they do not understand our signals. This could be first contact with a new species." Jake pointed at his screen. "Those ships are in perfect formation. Those are warships, sir. And they know what they are doing." Commander Hayes made his decision fast. "Sound the alarm. Morrison, start the emergency beacon. Lewis, open a direct link to Fleet Command on Earth. Everyone else get ready to evacuate. If they are hostile, we cannot fight 23 warships." The crew moved quickly, but Jake felt cold fear in his stomach. The station had a few small guns, just enough to scare off pirates. Against 23 military ships, Zeta 7 would not last long. The alien fleet moved closer. Their ships looked strange. They were dark metal with curves that seemed almost alive. Lights pulsed along their hulls in patterns. The ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time. "They are charging weapons," Jake announced. He tried to keep his voice steady. "I am reading energy signatures on all ships. Get that message to Earth now," Hayes ordered. "Whatever happens, they need to know about this." Amy's fingers flew over her controls. "Link established. Sending all our data. Ship types, weapons, tactics, everything." The first shot hit the station hard. The whole structure shook. Alarms screamed. The lights went out for a second, then came back on in red. "Shields down to 40%, Ben called from his station. "Hull breach on Deck 2 and Deck 3. That first hit took out half our defenses." More shots came, then more. The alien ships fired again and again. They showed no mercy. They targeted the station systems with perfect accuracy. It was clear they had done this before to other stations, other species. Jake kept working, sending every bit of information back to Earth through the quantum link. He recorded the ship designs, the weapon types, the way they attacked, everything that might help Earth defend itself. "Hull breaking apart," Ben shouted over another explosion. "We have maybe 2 minutes left." Commander Hayes stood in the center of the command room. His face was calm, even though he knew they were about to die. He had known this might happen when he took command of a frontier station. Someone had to watch the edge of human space. Sometimes that job came with a price. "Transmission complete," Amy reported. "Fleet Command received everything. They sent confirmation." "Good," Hayes said quietly. "We did our job." The final attack ripped through what was left of Zeta 7. The station's reactor failed, and for a brief moment, a tiny sun burned in the empty space between worlds. The alien fleet did not stop to check if anyone survived. The ships belonged to something called the Kesh Dominion. They had destroyed many frontier stations from many different species during their expansion across the galaxy. This was just routine work for them. War Master Krell, the commander of the fleet, barely noticed the destruction in his report. But the Kesh made a mistake. That quantum transmission, those last few minutes of data that Jake sent back to Earth, did something very important. The information triggered something called Protocol Sentinel. Deep inside Earth's military headquarters, computer systems that had been waiting in silence suddenly came alive. Warning alarms sounded in military bases across 3 continents. Admiral Stephen Clark was pulled out of a meeting and rushed to a special command center where the automated systems had already started working. "Confirmed hostile contact at Zeta 7, a young officer said. Her face was pale. "Station destroyed. They sent us complete tactical data before the end." Clark looked at the information coming in. His face became hard. He had served in the military for 30 years. He had always hoped this day would never come, but he had prepared for it. War Master Krell sat in his command chair on the flagship Eternal Claw. He felt satisfied with the day's work. His fleet had destroyed the human frontier station exactly as planned. The battle took only a few minutes and used very little ammunition. Now the path to the human colonies was open. "Target analysis complete, War Master," said his officer Vorn. The station had weak weapons and poor defenses. Standard frontier installation. They sent a transmission before we destroyed them, but we expected that. Krell tapped his fingers on the control panel. The Kesh were an old race. Their empire controlled 400 worlds. They had conquered 73 other species during their expansion. The humans would be no different. Intelligence reports said the humans were young and weak. They had only 3 colonies beyond their home world. Easy targets. "Continue on course," Krell ordered. "Next target is the mining colony at Delta Centauri. We will set up a base there, then push toward their main worlds." War Master Krell did not know that human intelligence about the Kesh was also incomplete. His people had based their information on old merchant ship reports and distant observations. They knew humans had a military, but they thought it was small and scattered across their few colonies. They had no idea how badly they had miscalculated. 6 light-years away, Captain Danny Rogers received the emergency message from Fleet Command. His face went pale as he read it. He had served with Commander Hayes years ago. Greg had been a good officer and a friend. Now Greg was dead, along with his entire crew. "All hands to battle stations," Rogers announced over the ship's speakers. "We just received mobilization orders under Protocol Sentinel. This is not a drill." The Defiant was a heavy cruiser, one of 72 scattered across human space. These ships normally protected trade routes and responded to emergencies. Now, every military ship was being called back to form up into battle fleets. But the recall was not just for active duty ships. In the huge shipyards orbiting Earth, ships that had been in storage for years suddenly came to life. The battleship Retribution had been shut down 5 years ago because of budget cuts. Now thousands of workers swarmed over her, bringing her weapons and engines back online. Next to her, 3 more battleships started the same process. Captain Nicole Price stood on the bridge of the Retribution. She had been teaching at the Naval Academy when the recall order came. Now she was back in uniform, and the ship under her feet hummed with power as the systems woke up. "Engineering says reactors at full power," her second officer reported. Weapons will be ready in 6 hours. Supply ships are loading food and ammunition now. We do not have 6 hours, Price replied. Tell them they have 3. We launch when ready or not. The same scene happened at every military base across human space. Humanity had learned lessons from their own bloody history. They kept a small, active fleet for peacetime, but their real strength was in reserve. Thousands of stored ships, kept carefully maintained, ready to return to service quickly. The Kesh intelligence counted 78 human military ships. They were about to face 2,000. On Mars, the 3rd Marine Force loaded onto assault ships. Colonel Andy Martinez watched his 15,000 Marines board with quick efficiency. He knew that across the solar system, 20 more divisions were doing the same thing. The Marines had been Earth's strike force for centuries. They would not fail now. All companies loaded, Colonel, Major Lisa Kim reported. We are ready to go. Martinez nodded. He had read the battle data from Zeta 7. The Kesh had good weapons and solid tactics. They were experienced conquerors. But they had made one big mistake. They had given humanity time to prepare. That quantum transmission, the final act by 12 people on a lonely station, had bought Earth precious hours, and humanity knew how to use every second. The Kesh fleet continued its slow advance toward Delta Centauri. They felt confident in their superiority. They had left the wreckage of Zeta 7 behind without a second thought. They were already planning victory celebrations. They did not see the human scout ships that followed them, watching their every move on passive sensors, sending constant updates back to Fleet Command. They did not notice when merchant ships cleared the shipping lanes. They did not understand what it meant when all human colony communications switched to military encryption. War Master Krell reviewed reports from previous campaigns. He calculated how many human colonies he could conquer before the end of the year. His analysts predicted very little resistance. After all, how dangerous could a species be if they put their frontier stations 3 light years from their nearest colony? It showed weakness, an inability to defend their space properly. The humans, he was certain, would surrender within a month. On Earth, Admiral Clark stood in the command center watching the main display. Every ship, every fleet, every reserve unit was accounted for. The military machine that had been sleeping was fully awake now. Fleet formation complete in 36 hours, his operations officer reported. We will have superior force at the rally point. Not good enough, Clark said. I want them ready in 24 hours. The Kesh made one mistake. They killed 12 people who were just doing their job, protecting others. They are about to learn what happens when you make Earth angry. He looked at the tactical data from Zeta 7 one more time, studying the alien ships. Advanced weapons, yes. Strong shields. Professional tactics. But nothing that human weapons could not counter. Nothing that human determination could not overcome. Send to all fleet commanders, Clark ordered. Rules of engagement are clear. Find them, stop them, and destroy them. No mercy unless they surrender. These aliens want a war. We will give them one they will never forget. The message flashed across communication channels to every human military unit now preparing for battle. From the smallest patrol ship to the largest battleship, the word spread. Humanity was going to war. The recall continued for the next 20 hours. Ships jumped into the rally points from every corner of human space. Captains who had been retired came back to command. Crews who had been on leave cut their vacations short. Everyone wanted to be part of the response. In the shipyards, workers performed miracles. Ships that should have taken weeks to prepare launched in days. Weapons that had been in storage were mounted and tested. Shields were charged. Engines were fired up. The industrial might of humanity, so long focused on peace and trade, turned entirely to war. Captain Price watched from the Retribution's bridge as more ships arrived at the rally point. Hundreds, then thousands. She had never seen so many military vessels in one place. The fleet stretched across space for thousands of kilometers. This is incredible, her weapons officer said quietly. This is necessary, Price replied. The Kesh attacked us without warning. They killed our people. Now they learn the cost. At the forward position, Captain Rogers positioned the Defiant with the other screen-in. The Kesh fleet arrived at Delta Centauri expecting to find a small mining colony with weak defenses. War Master Krell looked at his display and felt his confidence turn to confusion. "Report!" he demanded. "Multiple contacts," Vorn replied. His own voice sounded confused. "At least 200 human ships, War Master. 15 match our files for capital ships. The rest are cruisers and destroyers." Krell felt the first touch of worry. This could not be right. Intelligence had told him the humans had less than 100 military ships total, and most were scattered across their colonies. "They could not assemble this force so quickly," Krell said. "Check those readings again." But the sensors were not lying. In the space above Delta Centauri's third moon, the human fleet waited in perfect formation. At its center sat the battleship Retribution. Her weapons pointed at the approaching Kesh ships. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer reported. "Audio only. Standard frequency." Captain Nicole Price's voice came through clear and hard. "Kesh vessels, this is Captain Price of the Earth battleship Retribution. You entered human territory with hostile intent. You destroyed a peaceful station and killed 12 of our people. You will power down your weapons and surrender now, or you will be destroyed. This is your only warning." War Master Krell felt his pride surge. Surrender? The humans expected him to surrender. The Kesh Dominion had never surrendered in 4,000 years of expansion. "Open fire!" he commanded. "Teach these humans their place!" The Battle of Delta Centauri lasted exactly 14 minutes. The Kesh fleet's opening attack was strong. Their weapons tore into the forward human ships with good accuracy. 3 destroyers took heavy damage in the first exchange. But then the human fleet responded, and Krell realized with growing horror that he had made a terrible mistake. The human weapons were more powerful than intelligence had reported. Their shields were stronger than expected. Their tactics were advanced, coordinated with a precision that showed centuries of military experience, and their numbers were crushing. "Shields failing on the Dark Blade," Vorn reported. His voice rose with panic. "The Bone Crusher reports critical damage. War Master, we are badly outnumbered." "I can see that," Krell snapped. 5 of his ships were already gone, torn apart by focused human fire. The rest were taking damage faster than they could repair it. More human ships kept arriving, jumping in from other locations. The force of 200 became 300, then 400. It was impossible. Where had they all come from? "All ships retreat," Krell ordered. His pride fought with his survival instinct. "Fall back to the edge of the system. We need to regroup." But the human fleet was not letting them escape. The human ships pressed forward, their commanders showing no mercy. This was not a patrol action. This was destruction. Captain Danny Rogers guided the Defiant through the battle. His crew worked with quick efficiency. They had trained for this situation 1,000 times. The Defiant's railguns fired again and again, each shot hitting a Kesh ship. "Target the command ship," Rogers ordered. He watched War Master Krell's flagship try to escape. "That one does not get away." 3 human cruisers focused their fire on the Eternal Claw. The combined attack overwhelmed her shields and chewed through her hull. Krell had just enough time to realize the humans were not easy prey before his ship exploded around him. Of the 23 Kesh ships that had attacked Zeta 7, 19 were destroyed at Delta Centauri. 3 managed to escape, jumping to faster-than-light speed before the humans could finish them. 1, damaged and barely working, surrendered after its commander decided survival was better than pride. Admiral Clark reviewed the battle reports from the command center on Earth. His face was serious. They had won, but at a cost. 7 human ships destroyed, 12 more heavily damaged. Good people had died today. "What do we do with the prisoners, sir?" his aide asked. "Treat them according to military law," Clark replied. Medical care, proper detention. We are not barbarians." He paused. "But make sure our intelligence people question them. We need to know where the Kesh Dominion is, how large their empire is, and what we are really facing." The questioning of the Kesh survivors revealed a troubling truth. The 23 ships that attacked Zeta 7 were not an invasion fleet. They were scouts, the advance force for a much larger armada. The Kesh Dominion had over 10,000 warships spread across their vast empire. But the questioning also revealed the Kesh's critical mistake. They had badly underestimated human military capacity. They had only watched humanity's active peacetime fleet. They had no knowledge of reserve forces, of stored ships kept ready for war, of factories that could switch to military production overnight. The 3 Kesh ships that escaped Delta Centauri jumped back to their nearest base at maximum speed. They carried news of the disaster. Fleet Admiral Kresh, commanding the forward elements of the Kesh forces, listened to the survivors with growing concern. 200 human ships, he repeated, at a mining colony? At least 200, Admiral, the ship's captain confirmed. Maybe more arriving as we escaped. They destroyed the War Master's entire fleet in minutes. Kresh studied the tactical data that had been transmitted before the flagship's destruction. The human ships showed a level of advancement he had not expected. Their weapons were powerful, their tactics sound. These humans would be more difficult than anticipated. "Recall the forward elements," he ordered. "We combine our forces before proceeding, and send word to the Dominion High Command. They need to know the humans are stronger than we thought." But even as Kresh prepared for a more careful advance, the human fleet was not standing still. Admiral Clark had no intention of fighting a defensive war. "We hit them now," he told his fleet commanders. "Those 3 ships that escaped are running home to warn their friends. I want to follow them, find their bases, and destroy them before they can prepare. We take the fight to the Kesh on our terms." Captain Price, now commanding a battle group of 50 ships, volunteered to lead the pursuit. The Retribution and her escorts jumped into faster-than-light travel, following the energy trails left by the fleeing Kesh ships. What they found was a Kesh forward base on the edge of an empty system. It was a staging ground for the invasion. 60 Kesh ships were docked there, getting repairs and supplies. "All ships, weapons free," Price ordered. "Hit them while they are in port." The second battle was even more one-sided than the first. Half the Kesh ships never made it out of dock. Those that did found themselves facing human ships that attacked with brutal efficiency. The humans targeted engines and weapons, leaving the enemy ships helpless. When the firing stopped, the Kesh forward base was a cloud of debris. Not a single enemy ship remained able to fight. Price's battle group had taken only minor damage. "Take what intelligence we can," Price ordered. "Then we move to the next target. The Kesh wanted a war. We will make sure they regret it." News of the battles spread through both human and Kesh space quickly. The humans celebrated their victories and mourned their dead. They also felt satisfaction. The aliens who had attacked Zeta 7, who had killed 12 people just doing their jobs, were learning a hard lesson. The Kesh Dominion began to understand what they had started. The survivors who escaped Delta Centauri carried warnings back to Kesh Command, but by then it was too late. The humans were not waiting for the Kesh to come to them. Earth was coming to the Kesh. In the following weeks, human forces struck again and again. Small battle groups hit Kesh supply depots, communication stations, and repair facilities. Each attack was quick, brutal, and effective. The Kesh forward invasion force, scattered across dozens of systems, found itself under constant assault. Fleet Admiral Kresh stared at the display in front of him with disbelief. In just 3 weeks, human forces had destroyed or captured 19 Kesh bases. They had disabled or destroyed over 400 ships. They had pushed the entire forward invasion force back 200 light-years. The campaign that was supposed to be a simple conquest had become a nightmare. "How is this possible?" Kresh demanded. "Where are they getting all these ships?" Commander Sark, the senior intelligence officer, looked uncomfortable. "Our analysts believe the humans keep a large reserve fleet, ships that are not active but can be brought online quickly. We never saw them because they were in storage facilities, powered down." "And their factories?" "Much greater capacity than we estimated. They have multiple shipyards in their home system alone. They are converting civilian facilities for military production. Intelligence suggests they could field 5,000 ships within 6 months. Kresh felt the weight of his mistake. The Kesh Dominion had more total ships, yes, but those ships were spread across 400 worlds. The humans, packed into a small area of space, could bring crushing force to any target they chose. "Send word to the High Council," Kresh ordered. "Request immediate reinforcement. We need at least 1,000 ships to hold the line." But even as the message went out, human forces struck again. Captain Rogers and his squadron of heavy cruisers jumped into a Kesh supply depot. The battle was brief and brutal. The Kesh garrison, already scared by weeks of defeats, fought poorly. Rogers' ships destroyed the depot in less than an hour. Across human space, other captains launched similar raids. The human military, focused on peacekeeping for so long, had shifted entirely to attack. Every ship, every crew, every marine unit was committed to driving the Kesh back. On Mars, Colonel Martinez and his Marines boarded assault ships bound for the Kesh colony at Theta Sigma. Intelligence said the planet held 10,000 Kesh civilians and 3,000 troops. The mission was clear: secure the colony, capture the garrison, show that human forces could strike anywhere. The assault on Theta Sigma was the first ground operation of the war. It set the pattern for what followed. The Marines hit the planet with overwhelming force, supported by orbital fire from Captain Price's battle group. The Kesh garrison fought bravely, but found themselves outgunned. Within 18 hours, Colonel Martinez stood in the colony's command center, accepting the surrender of the Kesh commander. "Treat the prisoners well," Martinez ordered his officers. "Separate military from civilians. Full medical care for the wounded. We are soldiers, not monsters." But the message sent to the Kesh Dominion was clear. Nowhere was safe. If humanity could strike this deep into Kesh territory, no colony, no base, no fleet was beyond their reach. The Kesh High Council met in emergency session on their capital world. The 12 council members listened to Fleet Admiral Kresh's reports with growing alarm. "The humans are not the weak species we believed," Kresh concluded. "They have superior factories, greater reserve strength, and their warriors fight with a ferocity we did not expect. I recommend we seek peace before this war gets worse." "Peace?" Council Leader Vorkath's voice was full of scorn. "The Kesh Dominion does not seek peace with inferiors. We will crush these humans. Authorize full mobilization. Pull forces from the core worlds if needed. I want 5,000 ships sent to the human front immediately." "With respect, Council Leader," Kresh replied carefully, "such a withdrawal could leave our other borders weak. The Thalian Confederacy has been quiet, but they watch our struggle with interest. Then the Thalians will see our strength," Vorkath declared. "This human uprising will be crushed. We will make an example of their worlds that will echo across the galaxy for 1,000 years. But even as the Kesh prepared their massive counterattack, human intelligence tracked every ship movement, every communication, every strategic decision. The captured Kesh officers at Theta Sigma, treated well and questioned extensively, provided valuable information about Kesh military organization and fleet locations. Admiral Clark studied the intelligence reports in the command center. He noted the massive fleet buildup in Kesh territory, 5,000 ships. It was the largest military force humanity had ever faced, and it was coming straight for Earth. "They are committing everything," Clark said to his staff. "This is their knockout blow. They think they can overwhelm us with numbers." "Can they, sir?" his operations officer asked. Clark smiled grimly. "They are about to find out what happens when you threaten a human's home." He pulled up a map of the space between Kesh and human territory. There was a natural bottleneck. 3 star systems through which any large fleet would have to pass to reach Earth efficiently. Humans called it the Barrier Reef, a region of unusual gravity that made faster-than-light travel tricky. "This is where we stop them," Clark decided. "Send orders to all fleet elements. We concentrate our forces at the Barrier Reef. Every ship, every weapon, every marine. When the Kesh come through, we will be waiting." The mobilization order went out across human space. Ships began moving to the Barrier Reef. Battleships, carriers, cruisers, destroyers, support vessels, all moving to form the largest fleet in human history. Civilian volunteers signed up by the thousands, manning supply ships and medical vessels. Factories ran at maximum capacity, making missiles and ammunition. Humanity was betting everything on one massive defensive battle. Captain Price brought the retribution to the Barrier Reef and found herself part of a fleet that stretched thousands of kilometers across space. 2,000 human ships, organized into battle groups, assigned defensive positions, and waiting. She knew that many of these ships would not survive the coming battle. Many of her fellow officers would die. But there was no hesitation. They had a job to do. In the forward positions, Captain Rogers placed the Defiant as part of the screening force. His ships would be first to engage the Kesh, buying time for the main battle line to use their heavier weapons. It was the most dangerous position in the fleet, but Rogers had volunteered without hesitation. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced. "In a few hours, we face the largest enemy fleet ever assembled against humanity. The odds do not look good. But remember why we are here. 12 people died at Zeta 7 doing their duty. Hundreds more have died defending our colonies. We are here to make sure their sacrifice was not wasted. We are here to protect Earth, to protect our families, to protect everything humanity has built. So when those Kesh ships come through, we hit them with everything we have, and we win." The crew's response echoed through every deck. Across the fleet, similar speeches were given, similar preparations made. Weapons were checked, shields tested, emergency procedures reviewed. Everyone knew what was at stake. This would be the battle that decided the war. On the other side of the Barrier Reef, 5,000 Kesh warships prepared to jump. They felt confident in their numbers, certain of victory. Fleet Admiral Kresh commanded from his flagship, the Eternal Dominance. He planned for a quick, brutal victory. The humans would be crushed, their worlds conquered, their species enslaved. The Kesh had learned nothing from their defeats. They still saw humanity as inferior, lucky to have won a few battles against unprepared forces. They believed their greater numbers and longer military history would win the day. They were wrong. The waiting was the hardest part. Human crews sat at their stations, watching sensors, counting down to the Kesh Armada appeared from faster-than-light travel in a massive wave. 5,000 ships appeared at once at the edge of the Barrier Reef system. On board the Eternal Dominance, Fleet Admiral Kresh looked at his display with satisfaction. The human fleet was exactly where his scouts had reported. They sat in defensive formation around the system's second planet. "All ships advance in formation," Kresh commanded. "Keep together. We will roll over them with pure force." But as the Kesh fleet began moving forward, Kresh noticed something that worried him. The human ships were not retreating or moving. They simply waited, weapons ready but silent. It reminded him of something his old teacher had said. "Beware the enemy that waits calmly for your attack." On the Retribution, Captain Price watched the Kesh fleet approach with cold calculation. The aliens had positioned themselves exactly where Admiral Clark's plan required. Now it was time for the first phase. "All ships!" Clark's voice came over the command channel. "Execute Thunderbolt!" Suddenly, the space behind the Kesh fleet came alive with human ships. Another 1,000 vessels, hidden behind the system's outer planets and moons, jumped to positions blocking the Kesh escape route. The trap was sprung. Kresh felt his blood run cold as his display updated. He was not facing 2,000 human ships, he was facing 3,000, and they had just cut off his escape. "All ships, turn around," he ordered. "Break through the blocking force. We need to get clear." But the human fleet had more surprises. As the Kesh ships turned to face the blocking force, the main human battle line opened fire. Not with normal weapons, but with something the Kesh had never seen before. Railgun rounds traveling at incredible speeds tore through Kesh formations. Missiles with fusion warheads exploded in carefully planned patterns, destroying entire squadrons. Most terrifying of all, human ships had point defense that made Kesh missiles nearly useless, shooting them down by the hundreds before they could hit. "They are destroying us," Vorn reported. His voice shook. "We lost 300 ships in the first attack. Our weapons are not getting through their defenses." Kresh watched his carefully planned assault fall apart. The humans had better tactics, better coordination, and better training. His numerical advantage meant nothing when his ships were being destroyed faster than they could respond. Captain Rogers brought the Defiant into close range with a Kesh carrier. His ship's guns tore through the enemy vessel's shields. Around him, the screening force was doing exactly as planned, harassing the larger Kesh ships, forcing them to divide their attention, creating openings for the heavy human ships to exploit. "Target their command ships," Rogers ordered. "Take out their coordination, and they will fall apart." The battle raged for hours, a brutal fight that left space filled with debris and radiation. But slowly, steadily, the human fleet ground the Kesh down. For every human ship destroyed, 3 Kesh vessels were eliminated. The Kesh fought bravely, but courage alone could not overcome better preparation and tactics. On the Eternal Dominance, Kresh watched his fleet die around him. Over half his ships were gone, and the rest were taking damage faster than they could fix it. The humans offered no mercy. They fought like a species that had been pushed to the edge and decided to push back harder. "Fleet Admiral," his communications officer called out. "We are receiving a transmission from the human flagship, audio only." Kresh activated the channel. Admiral Clark's voice filled the bridge. "Kesh, Commander, this is Admiral Clark of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your fleet is destroyed. You cannot win this battle. I offer you one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons and you will be taken as prisoners of war and treated with military honor. Continue fighting and we will destroy every last ship. You have 60 seconds to decide." Kresh felt the weight of 4,000 years of Kesh history pressing down on him. The Dominion had never surrendered. Surrender meant dishonor, meant weakness. But as he looked at his display, at the 800 ships he had left from 5,000, at the relentless human forces closing in from all sides, he knew he had a choice. He could die here with his fleet, keeping Kesh honor, or he could live, return home, and tell the Dominion the truth about the humans. Tell them that this was a species that would never be conquered, that would fight to the death to defend their worlds. "All ships," Kresh said quietly. "Power down weapons. We surrender." The firing stopped. In the sudden silence, broken only by the sounds of damaged systems and venting atmosphere, the Kesh fleet drifted in space, defeated. Admiral Clark received the surrender from his command bridge. He allowed himself a moment of relief before the weight of victory settled on his shoulders. They had won, but at a cost. 400 human ships destroyed, thousands of people dead or wounded. The victory had been complete, but it had not been cheap. "Send recovery teams to help Kesh survivors," Clark ordered. "Anyone who surrendered gets medical treatment and proper care. And someone send a message to the Kesh homeworld. Tell them the war is over if they want it to be. But if they come back for another try, we will be waiting." On the Kesh capital world, the High Council received news of the disaster in stunned silence. 5,000 ships, their largest fleet in generations, destroyed or captured. The humans had not just defeated them, they had humiliated them. "What do you recommend?" Council Leader Vorkath asked wearily. The pride was gone from his voice, replaced by cold reality. "Peace," replied the military advisor. "Immediate negotiations. The humans are willing to talk if we stop attacking. We propose a border, agree to mutual non-aggression, and rebuild our forces. These humans are not like the other species we conquered. They are willing to accept peace, but they are also willing to fight to the last ship to defend their territory." The vote for peace negotiations was unanimous. 3 months later, on a neutral space station built just for this purpose, human and Kesh diplomats worked out the Treaty of Centauri. The terms were simple. The Kesh acknowledged human sovereignty over their claimed space. They agreed to pay for the damage done to Zeta-7 and other attacks. They established formal diplomatic relations. In return, humanity agreed not to pursue military operations into Kesh territory. Captain Nicole Price attended the signing ceremony as part of the military group. She stood with other officers who had fought in the war, watching as the diplomats sealed the peace. It felt anticlimactic after months of combat, but she understood the significance. Humanity had proven itself a power in the galaxy, a species that could not be pushed around or conquered easily. After the ceremony, she stood at a window looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3 light years from the nearest colony, was the debris field that had once been Frontier Station Zeta-7. 12 people had died there, starting a chain of events that had changed the balance of power in this region of space. "Worth it?" asked Captain Rogers, joining her at the window. "I do not know," Price admitted. "Thousands died in this war. Was it worth it to avenge 12 people?" "It was not just about revenge," Rogers replied. "It was about showing the galaxy that humanity will not be pushed around, that we protect our own, that there is a cost to attacking us." He paused. "Hayes and his crew bought us time with their sacrifice. They made sure Earth knew what was coming. Without that warning, the Kesh could have hit our colonies before we were ready. The war could have been very different." Price nodded slowly. He was right. Protocol Sentinel had worked exactly as designed. The frontier stations were not just observers. They were the alarm that gave Earth time to mobilize. Commander Greg Hayes and his crew had done their duty, and their sacrifice had saved countless lives. "I am going to recommend we rebuild Zeta-7, Price said. "Not as a military station, as a memorial, so nobody forgets what happened there." "Good idea," Rogers agreed. "The Kesh learned a hard lesson. Any other species thinking about attacking humanity should know the cost." Years later, Frontier Station Zeta-7 was rebuilt as a memorial station. 12 names were carved on a monument at its heart. Commander Greg Hayes, Lieutenant Jake Morrison, Corporal Amy Lewis, Dr. Lisa Grant, Engineer Ben Parker, and 7 others. Students from across human space visited to learn about the station, about the war, and about the price of freedom. In Kesh space, in their military schools and planning centers, the war with humanity became required study. The species that had seemed so weak had proven to be anything but. The lessons were clear. Never underestimate an opponent. Never assume superiority based on incomplete information. Most importantly, never attack humans unless you are prepared for total war. Because humanity, as the Kesh learned too late, would not surrender. They would not submit. Push them far enough, and they would burn your empire to the ground to protect what was theirs. The lonely outpost at the edge of nowhere had become a warning to the galaxy. Humanity stood ready, and they would defend their own to the last breath. And that warning would echo across the stars for generations to come. Ours. Some wrote letters home. Others checked their equipment for the 100th time. A few slept, knowing they would need their strength. Captain Price walked through the Retribution's corridors, speaking with her crew. She saw fear in some faces, determination in others. But she saw no one who wanted to be anywhere else. These were volunteers, every one of them. They had chosen to stand between Earth and its enemies. "We are ready, Captain," her weapons officer said. Price nodded. "Yes, we are." The sensors began screaming warnings. The Kesh fleet was coming, and humanity stood ready to meet them. Captain Rogers led the Defiant and 5 other cruisers in a raid on a Kesh fuel depot. They destroyed it in 30 minutes and jumped away before reinforcements could arrive. The Kesh fleet in that sector was left without fuel, their ships stranded. Other captains launched similar raids. The human military, trained for peacekeeping, had switched completely to offense. Every ship, every crew, every marine unit was committed to pushing the Kesh back. The Kesh tried to respond, but they were always one step behind. Human intelligence, boosted by information from captured prisoners, knew where every Kesh base was located. Human ships struck from unexpected directions, hit hard, and disappeared before the Kesh could organize a defense. For the Kesh Dominion, the invasion was turning into a disaster. In 3 weeks, they lost 19 bases, over 400 ships, and control of 200 light-years of space. The species they thought would be easy prey was systematically destroying their forward positions, and the human fleet was growing larger every day as more reserve ships came online, more crews finished training, and more weapons rolled off the production lines. What had started as a sleeping giant was now fully awake and very angry. G-ships. His group would be first to contact the enemy. It was the most dangerous job in the fleet, but Rogers had volunteered immediately. He thought about Commander Hayes and the crew of Zeta 7. They had done their duty, knowing they would die. They had bought Earth time to respond. Now it was his turn to honor that sacrifice. "All hands," Rogers announced over the ship's speakers. "We are about to face an enemy fleet. They think we are weak. They think they can conquer us easily. We are going to show them how wrong they are. For Zeta 7, for Earth, for humanity." The crew's response was immediate and loud. Across the fleet, similar preparations happened. Weapons were checked one final time. Shield systems were tested. Emergency procedures were reviewed. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone was ready. And somewhere in the darkness, War Master Krell and his fleet of 23 ships continued toward Delta Centauri, completely unaware that 2,000 human warships waited for them. The Kesh had learned nothing from destroying Zeta 7. They still saw humanity as weak prey, easy to conquer. They believed their experience and technology would win the day. In a few hours, they would learn the terrible truth, and the lesson would be written in fire and blood. "Send recall orders," he said quietly. "Every ship, every Marine, every pilot. Everyone comes back now. Full mobilization. And activate the vengeance protocols." Across all of human space, a sleeping giant woke up. Ships that had been stored in orbit for years suddenly powered on. Crews rushed to their stations. Marines loaded onto transport ships. Factories began making weapons and ammunition around the clock. The Kesh Dominion had no idea what they had just done. They thought they had destroyed a weak outpost. They had no idea they had started a war with a species that would never give up, never surrender, and never forget. War Master Krell and his 23 ships continued toward the inner human colonies. They expected to find easy targets, weak defenses, quick victories. They were about to learn how wrong they were.